You're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. In this episode, we're delighted to be out and about again, and this time found ourselves at On the Hill in the Teign Valley in South Devon. We're here to talk to Joe Clark, one of the directors of On the Hill, which is a land-based learning community interest company. They provide learning opportunities for young people as well as adult learning and teacher development in outdoor and environmental education. And the connection with the land they work on and with is at the heart of everything they do. Thanks for hosting me today, Joe.
It's nice to see you. I can talk a little bit about what we do here.
Yeah, that'd be great. So as people that have listened to our podcast a lot will know, I love a good origin story. So could you tell me the story of On the Hill, kind of where the idea came from and your journey with it so far?
Okay, so prior to On the Hill, I was running the education programme at Embercombe, land-based camps and day visits. And prior to that, for 10 years, I was a sort of outdoor teacher at the South Devon Steiner School.
Oh, cool, okay.
And my time at Embercombe came to an end, and it just coincided with the opportunity that Tina, my wife, and I had to buy this incredible piece of land, which is quite a story in itself, because I had a relationship with Jerry and his wife Rosemary, who had their herd of South Devon cattle here.
Oh, okay.
And I used to bring groups of children down to visit Jerry from Embercombe. We'd walk down to see the cows.
Yeah. Oh, is it walkable from here?
Yeah, 20 minutes up the road.
Okay.
So he would he in the 60s he was a teacher in a comprehensive school in London, and he was not your typical farmer. He was he used to be a judge in the local shows of the South Devon Cattle Breeding Society and all of that, and very erudite and one of these fantastic archetypes who all young children should meet, because he was just an authority in what he was talking about. You know, he had a suckling herd of South Devon cattle, and he'd sit the kids down in front of some cows in the barn and, what is it, do you think, that if I'm a cow, what do I need? What do I need from you? And the children would then, for the next hour, be completely and utterly transfixed by Jerry. And I developed such a lovely friendship with Jerry, and he was one of the only members of the local community who really supported what we were trying to, I was trying to do, particularly the educational initiative at Embercombe, the land-based educational initiative. So he was really he was great. He was really supportive. And he and I went to we had 2 trips to Kenya, where he was supporting a Maasai guy in learning to grow food, and I worked in this school there around experiential learning.
What an amazing opportunity.
And he and I shared a huge amount.
And it was his farm. This land that we're on was his farm before.
This was his farm. He had it for 23 years, and it's not an old farm. It's the house was only built in the 70s, and the barns are relatively new. And this was his kind of semi-retirement project, having this herd of this suckling herd of cattle. But anyway, it was time to move on from Embercombe, and Tina and I were thinking about, we've still got it in us to get involved in another project and so on. And I got chatting to Jerry one day. We used to meet up and have a pint and a meal down at the pub, and I was saying, well, we do have a bit of resource to buy something. And he suddenly said, well, you could buy my farm. I'd die a happy man if you bought my farm.
Amazing.
And
was that a shock?
I didn't think it possible, but when we started doing the figures, and he was very reasonable what he was asking, and so on, it all turned out to be possible. And I really wanted to mention him, because he's 87 now. He's had a stroke. He's actually in hospital at the moment, and it's
does he live nearby still?
No, he's recently moved to to a home up in near Guildford. So he up until very recently he was, and still kept very close contact. But anyway,
so you bought the farm.
Bought the farm, and it was a very well run but quite conventional, just grazing fields, and the barns here were, you know, full of cow dung, and they were just, you know, very crude barns for overwintering cattle. There was nothing very sophisticated about them. So in a way it was quite bare and bleak, but in another sense it was kind of a wonderful blank canvas. And prior to actually doing the deal on the farm, I gathered together quite a few folk who I'd been working with over the years, and we had a meeting up on top of the hill here. And lit probably what was the first fire that there'd been for a long time up on the hill, and we all sat round the fire, and sort of I shared this vision of, look, you know, the land-based educational initiative, and, you know, is needs to move here because the trustees no longer want it at Embercombe, and we're leaving, and so on and so forth. And the easiest part of that whole thing was, what should we call it? What should we call it? And everyone just sort of looked around, and we sat on this incredible hill, looking across all these other incredible hills, and everyone just looked at each other and went, on the hill. On the hill.
Amazing.
So that's how it was. So we formed, even before we moved here, we formed the CIC, so that we could get the ball rolling, just to get that sort of, you know, that social enterprise established that would sit within the farm, you know, be hosted by the farm. So that's, you know, it sort of hit the ground running.
And you had that very clear vision that you just wanted to move what you had been doing at Embercombe and do it here. Was that kind of...
Well, certainly wanted to run camps, didn't necessarily want to do it in the same way.
No.
But certainly part of the model would be to, you know, running camps and getting all the participants who come on the camps to get you know, involved in the process of building a project, as well as involved in the garden and you know, all aspects of daily life. The kind of core ethos is that we engage people in meaningful activity. We don't invent silly things for people to do and call it education.
Which is a bit like the Montessori approach, right? So Maria Montessori was kind of like, said, well, just get them doing the things you're doing, but in a child appropriate way. So you know, learning through all the things that you do as an adult.
And you know, although I'd moved on and there were many things that I wasn't comfortable with around Steiner education, but I was for 8 years at the South Devon school teaching all the outdoor science and gardening and all that sort of stuff. Again, you know, the way I've worked since has been quite informed by that philosophy in terms of, well, you know, in the mainstream it's often called, we refer to the head, heart and hands. In Steiner philosophy it's referred to as thinking, feeling and willing.
Oh, I like
that. So it's actually, in what way do we engage the thinking, in what way do we engage the heart, the feeling, and you know, the hands is about how we engage our metabolic system, how we engage our body in terms of our senses and our, you know, what we can create. So it was, you know, everything I've done since was quite informed by that. And here we wanted to carry on, certainly with some of the contacts we still had, but develop a new initiative where it was kind of much clearer here what people were coming to. You know, beautiful piece of land was Embercombe, but it wasn't, often people weren't clear, what is this? You know, what it was an organisation trying to be a lot of things to a lot of people, and in a sense it was nice here to come and just be really more focused. This is a farm, and we do land-based educational stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so there was when people come, there's much less ambiguity.
Yes.
And the site is much more, you know, a lot of what goes on happens in a relatively geographically sort of small space.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about the farm? So obviously you've told me a bit about who had it before you, but just it'd be good for people listening to have a kind of a picture painted of where we're sat, like, because I can see obviously the orchard behind us and just about the sunflowers in the distance, but kind of how big is it, I guess, and kind of what else is around here that I can't see?
So we're sat here in the middle of a field.
It doesn't feel like a field. It feels like someone's garden. It's beautiful.
Exactly. It was a field, and it's funny because I'll bring back Jerry again. He used to come when he was still reasonably well. I invited him down to come and speak to the children, and he would say, he would often say, do you know, in all those years that I owned the farm, I would never just sit and enjoy the view. And here we are just sitting here, because here we are sitting in the circle garden, which is being fashioned out of a field, which has got a fire pit in the middle and a little levelled area. And this was the first piece of work that we did, was to create a place for people to gather, because the whole project is about bringing people back onto the land. I was brought up on a farm in Devon, and as a adventurous naughty boy, scrumping here, there and everywhere, I was often told to get off my land.
Yes.
So my philosophy is very much here, get on.
Yeah.
Get on my land, So the farm, as I said, was kind of a blank canvas.
Yeah.
And, the mission was to design and create something that works for people, but is also massively taking into account the needs of the natural world.
Yeah.
So focusing on biodiversity, focusing on habitat has been a really huge, and then that feeds in to the whole educational initiative. That's very much part of it.
Yeah.
And we straight away became part of the mid-tier countryside stewardship scheme, where just things like most of the hedgerows were neatly manicured. Farmers have been doing that for 50 years, don't know why, but trimming the hedgerows so that they're nicely shaped.
Yes.
And I think still there's that kind of mentality that, well, a well-kept farm is a well-manicured farm.
Yes.
And so it's been an absolute joy to, as part of the countryside stewardship scheme, but something that I was going to do anyway, just not cut the hedges. And just see them grow out.
As we spoke to the husbandry school, who are a bit further away, and Jonty there is obsessed with the hedges and letting the hedges kind of, because they're such an amazing habitat if they're left alone, aren't they?
And these are ancient hedgerows that, if you look at the really old maps, the hedgerows are in the same positions, they're exactly the same.
Yeah.
So they're, and there's a formula about, the age of a hedgerow inevitably increases the number of species that are surviving in it. And,
amazing.
But they're just, it's almost, with all that flailing for the last 40 or 50 years, is that hedgerow is just kept on hold.
Yes.
And so when you stop, you just release it and off it goes.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested in, I think I'm probably equally as obsessed as Jonty about this, because I often wonder, people make a lot of noise about tree planting and, oh yes, we've offset carbon because we've planted 1 million trees with HS2 or whatever else. But those tiny little trees, it's years and years before they actually give any benefit.
Yeah, and I always wonder, do they go back and check that they haven't been eaten by deer and died? Because someone was saying in Wales that in the Brecon Beacons they kept farmers getting paid to plant trees, but they kept all the trees would die, then the next year they get paid again to plant the same ones.
No aftercare. There's no monitoring.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy. But if you leave a hedgerow, immediately it starts to, just And after 7-8 years now, these hedgerows, they're just amazing. They're like little strips of woodland.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look
And I've redone a lot of the fences so that they're a few metres away from the hedge, so I'm allowing it to spread wide as well as tall. And I wish we'd had a wildlife survey when we first came, so that we could sort of be a bit more measured. But anecdotally, I can say that the bird population and the general sort of richness of insect life and so on has definitely increased since we first came here.
And you don't have animals here anymore, it's just plants?
No,
you've got animals
we've got
as well?
a flock of sheep.
Okay.
And we've got a few pigs recently.
Oh, have you?
And we've got chickens.
Oh, nice, you've got quite a few.
So there's a few animals, just they're not part of any kind of major money-making attempt.
No.
They're much more about keeping the meadows in good
check,
condition. But we are fattening up a couple of pigs that are for food, and we produce eggs, and some of the sheep are slaughtered for meat.
Yeah.
So there's that. But
and you've got some beehives as well, you said?
Yeah, we've got some beehives. Yeah. So
do you get your own honey then?
Yeah. Well, we're just about. We've just borrowed an extractor, so we're just about to harvest our first super of honey.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
You're really looking forward to it.
First of our own honey,
which
would be really nice. There's a few things missing. I've been sort of putting it out there. We have enough land, and I'm really keen if somebody wants to come here and set up a little micro dairy, because that would be, we buy in dairy products.
Yeah.
And, it'd be much better if that was happening here.
Yeah.
Because the model is, our model of regenerative land use is that the farm is sort of the host entity.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it makes sure that everything's functioning and working, and constantly any money that comes to the farm in the last 7 years has just been ploughed back.
Yeah.
But within that sits On the Hill, and then 4 years ago, a couple, Holly and Tim, came and set up Teign Greens.
Yes.
Which is the veg box scheme. And they have an energetic and a financial relationship with the farm.
Yeah.
And it's where the crossover is between the social enterprises and the farm, and all the engagement of all the people. That's really exciting, because there's so much, potential for reciprocity and collaboration.
Yeah.
It's so lovely. But there's still space for, other I'm keen for other initiatives to happen, because I'm really excited about having been brought up on a farm this size, and as a teenager when I was 15, the farm had to be sold because you couldn't. It was around the time when you just simply couldn't make a living out of a small farm.
Yeah.
None of the small farmers around here can make a living purely out of farming in the conventional way.
Yeah.
They've always got another sideline. They're either contractors, or they do wrought iron work, or whatever else. And run on a conventional way, a farm like this can possibly make a living for a family. And yet, with Teign Greens and On the Hill, and the sort of buzz of activity that's happening here now, it's actually providing a living for quite a number of people, and a part-time wage for quite a few people as well, as well as all the educational and volunteering and trainee opportunities. So I'm really keen on, creating an example of what can happen on a small farm in the heart of Devon that isn't, it used to be an arable. This land was all arable, but nowadays, with the size of the machinery and all that, it's not viable. And actually, it's environmentally, it's a damn good job it isn't, because there's opportunities here to really develop the place as a sort of oasis of biodiversity. Really.
I mean, even as you talk, there's loads of butterflies behind you, and I was just thinking, I don't think I've seen many butterflies this year, but I've just seen them all over your flowers. Like
probably cabbage white.
Yeah, just on this white flower, and this amazing pink flower that looks like a starfish or something.
Oh, the bed of dahlias. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this circle garden, there's my wife Tina and Pam and Arwie and others come every Tuesday. Tuesday is circle garden day, and people come and volunteer in this space to just beautify.
Yes.
And it's really, really, it just feels more and more important that we focus on the beauty.
Yes.
And the aesthetics. You know, I know years ago I was much more sort of no, we need to grow food. Food's important.
Yes.
Yeah, vegetables. But actually, more and more as I've got older, you know, it's like we need all forms of nutrient.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know, surrounded by beauty. And I'm witness so often when we have groups come, whether they're adults or kids or whatever, how people are affected in such a positive way. I mean, people are affected by just, as you know, just by being in green environments.
Yes, yeah.
You know, particularly, you know, the kids we have here with special educational needs, and you know, they can't function very well in their school environments, but they come into a green environment and suddenly they're
a different world,
it's very
different child. Yeah, yeah. The beauty thing's really interesting, isn't it? Because whenever I've had an allotment plot, they've always been like, you can only have this tiny percentage. It's got to be flowers because like it's meant to be useful. It's meant to be.
Is that right?
Yeah, and like I can't remember what percentage it was, but like you were allowed to grow some flowers, but like the allotment police will be making sure that you haven't gone over
outrageous.
Your percentage. Well, this is an allotment we had in Brighton, and if you grew too many flowers, they'd be like, you need to put more vegetables in, or you're out.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's such a focus on like things having a use, but actually, yeah, maybe we're undervaluing the use of beauty, like. Because that does make such a difference. Like, if we were up here and none of these flowers are here, it would still be nice, but it wouldn't be the same as it is, like surrounded by like this cascade of colours. Yeah,
and as I say, more and more, I to witness how people benefit and appreciate just being in the surroundings, and I think that applies to the whole farm really. And we have taken quite a lot, and it's often noted, we've taken quite a lot of effort to focus on the aesthetics.
Yeah.
You know how farms can be really untidy?
Yeah.
Just crap everywhere, and old rotting machinery, and you know, plastic piles of this, and you know, and I can't bear that. You know, it's really feels really important that we, especially that if this place is going to be, you know, suitable and beneficial for people.
Yeah, and nourishing.
Then, and nourishing. Then why have, you know, piles of rubbish everywhere?
Yes, yeah, exactly. In fact, one of my favourite forest schools I ever visited was Orchard Forest School in Brixham, and she is in an orchard, but part of her agreement of the lease is that she maintains the orchard. So, and I've never been to a forest school like it, where it's just so beautiful and everything is like nice to look at. And I was like, oh, it's not like some of the forest schools where it's just, you know, muddy stuff everywhere and bits of half discarded wood. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like I want to come to this forest school as a kid, just because it was such a an impact to walk into this beautiful orchard and see where these two worlds of outdoor education and kind of the beauty of the orchard had kind of collided. It was nice.
Yeah, interesting. It's kind of what one of the things I was inspired by teaching in a Steiner school, because the aesthetics, for example, of a classroom, how a classroom's decorated and what goes up on the walls and what you're surrounded by. You know, the classrooms feel so homely and lovely, and the kindergarten is just like, it's just nicer than any home, you know.
Yes,
and you go into so many state schools and they're decorated like hospitals
or a bare room,
or prisons. You know, they're not, you know, it's not deemed to be important. That environment you spend, you know, how many hours a day you spend in those environments, and they're so cold and austere and unpleasant.
Yeah, exactly. And you think, and this is meant to be a good learning environment.
And I'm so believe, you know, the power of the, you know, as educators or as facilitators, you know, here out in such a beautiful space, the power of the land and what it gives people without us doing anything.
Yes.
You know, the osmosis effect, I call it. It's just like
just to be here.
That is for a lot of kids who never ever come into a space like this. That's really powerful, and it's obviously the way we facilitate that and how we bring them into that experience is valuable. But you know, the real inspiration is from the land itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Can we talk about the work you do with the kids then? So what do the education initiatives for young people look like here? What does it kind of look like in real life?
It depends on how. Yeah, obviously we have day visits, and we have groups from certain schools that we work with of kids with special educational needs. We have not been working very much with younger children lately.
Okay.
Except we have a large family camp and
Yes.
loads of kids. We just had a family camp this August, and there were 50 kids here for,
Wow, amazing.
for 6 days.
They're all in tents?
With 40. Yeah. All in camper vans and things.
Is there a flat space for tents somewhere? Or
There's some levelled out spaces over
okay.
here.
I was just looking at the hill behind me thinking, I think you just roll down out of the tent all night.
There's been a lot of excavating and making little spaces levelled
nice.
back over here for bell tents
brilliant.
and for parking and things like that. So the ethos is that we engage people in meaningful activities.
Yes.
So what matters is what actually needs to be done. And I'm always a little bit worried about grandiose mission statements.
Okay, yeah.
But just as a kind of way of explaining, we came up with a sentence which was engaging people in meaningful activity in service to the land, community, the self and the future. And the in service bit is really important, is really that sense of, what are we in service to?
Yeah.
One of the sort of philosophical underpinning elements, if you like, is when groups come here for any sort of period of time, whether it's a 2 or 3, or we've just about to get a group from London next week, 37 teenagers for 7 days.
Wow, okay.
Which is
That's
really
a long time.
Powerful.
Yeah.
I'll talk a bit more about that in a minute, but the idea that the landscape enables us to give and the way we engage with it enables us to give the young people a sense of what went on before, to enable us all to be experiencing and benefiting from what we have now. Yeah, that might be some carrots somebody sowed in the spring. That might be a tree someone planted 10 years ago. That might be a building that hundreds of people got involved in building. It might be also looking at one of our ancient trees that's 700-year-old oak, and trying to vision that far back. So trying to in terms of the narrative and the stories and how we kind of introduce a group to what's here, is helping them to get an understanding of what went on. To be curious. Wow, what happened here? What's the story? What went on? How is it that I'm able to benefit so much from the energy that's gone before me? And the enthusiasm, the will, the love, the whatever you want to call it, that's gone in to make it possible. So here we are now. What can we put in
for the future?
Oh,
I love
what
that.
can we? That's about. That's being in service, acknowledging and appreciating what's gone on before us. Being present, here we are now, and really enjoying it to the full. But then what's the legacy that we're going to leave behind? And that's really core. I mean, if you look at the Cobb barn, and I can show you sort of inside later, but that was just a cowshed with wooden walls and a tin roof, and we took the wooden walls down, so it was just a roof on frames, and then started to build cob walls, which took 6 years.
Wow, it's a long time.
And there's the amount of people, adults on volunteer weeks, school groups, all sorts, that have been involved. I estimate roughly 1,400 or 1,500 people.
Wow, that's amazing.
Have been involved in that build, because each layer of cob was just 10 inches of cob that was heaved up with pitchforks and then fashioned by wooden mallets and shaped, and that was a layer. And then each group I offered each group the opportunity to do a time capsule for the future.
Amazing. So they're hidden in the...
So there's bottles full of messages to the future. God knows what the message what rubbish.
But the cob would have to be destroyed for the bottles to come out.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're in
they
the wall.
They could be there for like 100,000 years.
Well,
how long does cob tend to last?
Forever.
Okay, yeah.
Forever if you keep it dry.
Yeah, okay.
There's no limit to its lifespan. I mean, the story is like, well, will it be other humans that discover these time capsules, or maybe we've messed up too much and it will be aliens.
Yes, I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Yes. But anyway, there's lots of stories embedded in
love that.
the walls.
That's
but
incredible.
Also, when a lot of people who come into the space, they sort of oh, this feels amazing. This space, it feels like it's always been here. And I think one of the things is it's just had so much positive energy go into it, so much goodwill go into it. It's kind of the building's got soul. It's being ensouled in a certain sense because it's had all this incredible human impact input to make it what it is. It's nearly complete now. It's really beautiful space in there. But it's an example of what the curriculum, if you like, is what is going on.
Yeah, so I was just about to say, so the young people coming, what they join in to kind of for this meaningful work could be anything from helping to build a cob barn to harvesting apples to...
Absolutely. I mean, it's what's seasonal.
Just whatever's going on.
Food is core because, I feel really strongly that food and our relationship with food, and it is, if you were to, use the academic term in a way of describing our educational philosophy, it's a relational pedagogy.
Yeah.
It's not about content.
Yeah.
The content comes, and the learning of skills, and the information comes from the curiosity.
Yeah.
But we're not here to deliver massive amounts of content.
No.
We're here to bring people into relationship to the living world, the food that they eat, community, themselves, each other. It's a relational. So the missed opportunity so much in particularly mainstream education is that there is no conscious or positive or sensible relationship with the food that everyone eats. School provision of food has just got worse and worse and worse since I was a kid, when at least we used to sit together and sort of eat a meal and have to sit there for 20 minutes and eat a nice kind of proper meal. Now it's just fast food, isn't it?
And wolf down and get down from the table.
No time. Lunch times have been reduced to no time. Just about enough time to wolf something down, have a little run around, and then back in. It's
crazy. I was just thinking, I remember cooking a roast dinner recently for my kids, and obviously roasts take forever to cook, and then they ate it so quick. I was like, no, you're going to stay at the table. I've just spent 2 hours cooking this. You can at least sit and talk to me for 5 more minutes before you get down. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it's this kind of culture, isn't it, of everything's quick and what's next and what's next and what's next, and we all need to slow down a bit more.
So we just try and bring a window into a kind of culturally different possible way of doing things, where there's much more reverence given to the way that we produce the food, and obviously the way we grow it, and everyone gets involved in the gardening but also the harvesting. And whatever program we run, there'll be 4, 5 or 6 young people working with our cooks and facilitators in the kitchen to produce the meal. There's no meals are never produced for people.
They're getting involved
by the groups, and each group, say the group, we've got 37 teenagers coming in 10 days, and every meal will be a small group of them working in the kitchen producing that food, and they so love to and that'd be part of the creativity as well, but not done in the way that food tech is taught. I mean, the fact that it's even called food tech is ridiculous. This is production of food needs to be something creative, something like, okay, so what have we got? Oh, we got loads of greens and potatoes, and we've got some nice fennel, let's use that today, and okay, so this is what we've got, let's see what sort of lovely meal we can create around what is available, and then get creative with that. And the kids get such a pleasure of, spending a morning producing that food, but then, and there they are serving it.
The pride of
in service to everyone else's. And we actually, with a lot of the groups, we make the effort, and it's absolutely not from a religious perspective, but we make the effort to get everyone in a circle and just do a blessing on the food. Just give thanks. Just be grateful. Just let's just have a moment where we can just, and thanks to the team cooking, and thanks to all you guys who've been harvesting and in the garden. It matters that we show a little bit of appreciation that we've got this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, spend some time, sit and eat, and there's no hurry, and chat, and be with each other without having to rush.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I was just thinking there's a reason, isn't there, why like food and feasting is like a part of cultures all around the world, because it's like this opportunity to bring everyone together and share that time in a way that you don't get that opportunity organically elsewhere, do you? To kind of sit and be with each other, and
No. And so back to this thing of being in service, really. I think it's really core, because I think we're hardwired to be communal beings, to be collaborative, to be communitarian. I think that's part of our hardwiring. It's part of our DNA. And I think if we witness small children, they naturally
they just do it.
Do that. And I think what our education system does is kind of somehow remove that by the individualization and the competitive nature of the way that our education system is set up. I like to see it as a kind of envisage it as a the thing about being in service, imagining it as a muscle, our in service muscle.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you can only imagine if we didn't, as little children, exercise our legs, our muscles would atrophy.
Yes, yeah.
And we wouldn't be able to walk. And unfortunately, I think the way that our education system and society is constructed, I think the in-service muscle becomes atrophied.
Yes.
And I think very much part of our ethos is to try and sort of re-exercise that in-service muscle, to know what it actually feels like to be making a contribution towards something that's much bigger than yourself, and that is about engaging with the future and putting something in place that that people will benefit from in the future, and to feel good about that. So that's really, and I think the landscape, what happens through a landscape, whether it's a garden or a woodland or a forest or a hedgerow, enables us to sort of tell that story and bring that narrative and help young people understand what it really, and that it matters.
Yeah.
Especially now, because of the state of things with the sort of biodiversity collapse and the climate emergency and so on, how much that matters now. Yeah.
And actually, I guess like there's lots of research, isn't there, about climate anxiety in teens, and some really sad statistics. I was looking them up about something like 70% of teens are like worried about the climate all the time, but out of those 70%, like most of them have said we don't really trust the adults in charge to do anything, so they're just kind of left feeling hopeless. So I guess coming up to places like this might give them that kind of, oh look, there are people doing things to try and help, and it helps them to see what things can be done to, I mean, obviously I know that one patch in Devon isn't going to fix the world climate crisis, but it's still good for them to see that there are adults that care and are working in the right direction.
Yeah, and it helps them to understand that perhaps there's something they can do.
Yeah, exactly. It makes them feel less apathetic.
That they can because it's that feeling of powerlessness and impotency, isn't it?
Yeah.
With children and young people, and it's partly again the nature of our education system, because it's that will. We do some outreach work in schools, helping to develop alternative provision areas and building pizza ovens and making gardens and things like that. And what I've always experienced with children in schools and the children who come here, they're crying out to contribute. They're crying out to be trusted to do something useful.
Yes, to help. Yeah.
What our education system does is the message it's giving is, look, you actually have to jump through 1,000 hoops in order for you to prove that you're good enough to contribute to society. Yeah. And that won't be until you've finished school or university or whenever. And then perhaps you'll be ready to contribute. But actually, if you look at indigenous cultures and cultures that aren't sort of westernized cultures, children are playing their part right from the start, right from the beginning. They're working alongside their parents and their siblings and their aunts and their uncles, and they're involved. So they're developing their kind of in-service muscle.
Straight away.
Right the way through.
Well, because they're not incapable, are they? Like they're capable of doing things, maybe not on the same like volume or scale as an adult, but they can still get a kid like I used to get mine helping me weed in the allotment. They're still capable of picking up weeds and stuff. I mean, often they would pull up the seedlings, but you can let toddlers off that occasionally.
Well, I was lucky enough to be brought up on a farm, and that is what happened traditionally on perhaps not now with so much farming being so mechanized, but on a traditional farm, which is how I was brought up. That as kids we were expected
to help
to make a contribution. I mean, it wasn't always pleasant because my dad was a bit of a tyrant, so but I'm grateful that I learned about making a contribution and getting involved, and I learned probably more from being brought up on a farm than I did at school.
No, it's funny, isn't it? It's just me and the kids at home, and we were like, yesterday said, right, the house really needs a clean, so they're all helping. My youngest was like, oh, it's so boring, and I said, that no one particularly enjoys cleaning, but like we're all working together as a team, and he was like, yeah, okay, I suppose so. And then he stopped moaning and kind of cracked on. But it was funny, like this realization where he was like, but it's not very fun. And I said, well, no, it's not fun. Like, I don't enjoy cleaning bathrooms, but like we've got to do it. And he was like, oh, okay. And then once I kind of framed it within that, there's 4 of us living here, why don't we all have a job and we can, he was like, oh, okay. And then it was fine, and he cracked on and cleaned all his cupboards for me, and job's good. But
great.
It was just funny, like this moment where I was like, hang on, do you think that I think this is fun? Because I definitely don't. But,
it's interesting that what's fun and what's boring and so on. And we, part of the ethos here is to, there's a lot of really hard work that people get involved in, but it's how we as the facilitators and the adults can actually make it
more enjoyable
and have a bit of a laugh and keep the conversation going.
And
a lot of the feedback from kids is that particularly teenagers who have a bit of an aversion to work actually start to the feedback when we have reflection and feedback is a big part of what we do. Is quite enjoyed that, or actually works, I feel really good at having achieved that, or so part of it is developing a perhaps a different relationship to work, and not necessarily it being a 4-letter word, and perhaps not drawing such look, a heron.
That one. Right.
That's a heron. That's unusual that they come and visit. We've got some ponds, some wildlife ponds here, and there's a heron that sometimes just comes to visit. I'm disappointed because there's certainly no fish, but look, that's amazing. You don't often see them in this area.
That's very cool. I wonder where he's off to.
He's going down into the...
Is there a waterway down there?
There's a little stream. I don't know. Anyway, where was I? What was it?
I was actually going to ask about, it's a nice segue, I was going to ask about what the kids how they receive their experience, like how do they find their time here, like what's the kind of general feedback from kids, and you spoke a little bit there about them kind of feeling quite like a sense of accomplishment at the end of the week, but presumably that I'm getting the impression that as a general rule, like everyone's pretty happy at the end of their time here.
I think the long camps, one of the big one of the powerful bits of feedback which I'm really interested in is how they feel about having a period of time without any screen technology. And how that affects them, and how they feed back on how great that feels.
Yeah.
How, in certain sense, how liberated they feel from not because they have to hand their phones in.
Yeah.
And up until recently, we're really gutted because suddenly there's phone reception here.
Oh, is there?
Up until recently, there's been no phone reception.
I was going to say, I assumed there was no phone reception here because I've been at another place in this valley and remember there being no phone signal. And I remember the parents of the group that we were attending all saying, actually, this is great. Because not just for the kids, they were like, but for us, it means like we can't check our phones for 4 hours. And that's brilliant. And actually, it made a lot of us kind of consider our relationships to our phones and be like, we didn't even realise how often we were checking and having this need to like reply to people straight away, or someone sent me a message. And now it's that kind of being places where there's no signal has been amazing for me to go, actually, I need to work on my relationship with my phone.
Well, what we've realised is that now that they've connected this phone mast up here, we have to really establish a clear phone policy to try and keep that culture.
Because before they couldn't go on them anyway, so it didn't really matter.
So we did it with the family camp. We had about 100 people here with the family camp in August.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. So was it parents with no phones as well?
So we asked at the beginning of the camp, the first sort of introductory meeting, we say, look, this is the situation. We do actually have coverage here, but could you just, do your phoning and so on in your own tent? And from public spaces where everyone's mixing and the kids and everyone and eating and sharing and everything, can we just not have phones? And it was brilliant. Everyone respected that.
Yeah, I can imagine,
How lovely. How lovely. You're not having a conversation with someone and suddenly their phone rings. Oh, I've got to answer this. Like, hang on a minute. We were just talking.
Yeah, why is that phone call more important than this? Yeah.
So, where they, the phones start to just dominate everything. And so it's really, it's going to be a bit of a challenge just to keep that culture. But
it's an interesting one because I facilitate a home ed teenage group. I almost said teenage, very weird there. But the teenagers there have started to, like, we hosted it at my house once, and I opened my coffee table drawer and it was full of mobile phones, and I was like, and they'd self kind of regulated and said, right, everyone at the beginning of the session, put your phones in the drawer and shut it, because they were like trying to take time away from them. And I was like, that's really interesting that they've realised that there's an issue, but they've also put something in place and gone, right, we've all put the phones in the drawer, and that way we can't look at them for a session.
One of the things I sometimes say to some of the groups who've been here for a long camp is just talk about how they've been here using all sorts of tools, sharp tools, dangerous tools, learning the safety around tools, and shortly they're going to be reunited with another tool, their mobile phone, which is incredibly useful thing. But how would it be to treat that as a tool? And also to understand that there's a risk, and I think this is serious. And now, there are some of us who've been banging on about this for years, but it's sort of, it's becoming mainstream now. The sort of realizing the detrimental effects of people spending too long on a screen and having the screens too young as well. And to try and encourage teenagers to just monitor this and get it under some sort of control, because that recognition now that is becoming mainstream, that this is a severe addiction, probably more problematic than most substance addictions, actually. But it's much more of it's kind of an invisible addiction, but the damage caused is massive.
And there's a lot of focus on teenagers and young people with phones, and actually I think maybe we should be talking about grown-ups who are addicted to their phones as well.
Absolutely.
My teenager came in and said, right, Mum, this year I want to really use my phone less. She said, because everyone around me walks around with their phone in their hand all the time and they're all addicted, and actually I don't want to be an adult who's like that. And I said, oh God, am I one of the worst ones? And she said, no, you're one of the better adults, really. She said, but it's not just like, she was like, it's just everyone, Mum, everyone does it. And I was like, oh, it's like interesting. And I read a Times article which was where they'd interviewed kids about screen time, and lots of them were like, my parents are really strict with my screen time, but they're constantly walking around texting, they don't put it down for dinner. And you think, yeah, it's such a big issue, but we talk about it for kids but not so much for grown-ups, and actually we're the ones that should be setting an example for the next generation.
So some of them do find it difficult, especially the sort of second day if they're here for a long camp. You know, that there's almost a sort of withdrawal. You know, that sort of that looking for a distraction.
Yeah.
I'm bored. I've got nothing to do. Oh, in the pocket, hand in the pocket. Oh, I'll get my phone out.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned earlier your daughter about boredom.
Oh, that's my little boy.
Your boy. Yeah. We've got a funny relationship to boredom, haven't we? Because we sort of think, we as adults or parents or teachers or educators think
Boredom's
we've got
good.
to somehow keep everyone entertained.
Oh, I don't know. I always say to them, it's good to be bored, because that's when your mind's gonna start giving you something to do.
But we're, the thing about mobile technology is that it doesn't allow for those spaces where, I say to kids, some of the greatest bits of creativity
have come out
of stillness. And you could call it boredom, you could call it emptiness, you could call it just spaciousness.
Yes. Yeah.
So one of the first things, we'll sit here in the morning meeting with the group, and the first, after we've had a game and a check-in and framing the day, the first part of every single day, and we do it with all groups now, adults, anyone, is a sit spot.
Okay.
A
couple of minutes of quiet.
Well, we ask people to go, we sort of draw a veil of silence over everything and ask people to go and find a nice spot, at least 10 paces away from the next person, and then just sit in silence. And it's not framing it like, oh, we're going to meditate now or anything like that. It's just listen to your heartbeat, listen to your thoughts, listen to how you're feeling, listen to the birds, feel the wind on your face, feel the rain on your face if it's raining, because we still do it in the rain. And there's a little bit of resistance, and some people find it really, really difficult to begin with. But slowly, if it's certainly a long camp, it's amazing how you get the feeling that people are almost looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a bit of just me time.
Yeah.
Because how much time do we just spend on our own?
Yeah, not much. Yeah. Yeah. Really special. And do you do that with the adults that you work with as well?
Yeah.
I was like, could we move on to the adults? So I think on your website it talks about kind of being involved in, I'll find my little notes, part of like teacher development. What kind of work are you doing?
So we haven't done a lot lately, I have to say. It's something we'd really like to sort of move into more. Historically, I did work with some trainee teachers who were doing PGCE.
Okay.
Just to try and give a different flavour of outdoor learning, because there are certain, the type of outdoor learning that we do isn't necessarily very mainstream. In a sense, there's the adventure and there's the sort of outward boundy type stuff, and then there's the sport. But and a lot of schools have their little forest school initiative, but it's often a bit tokenistic.
Well, we spoke to one forest school a teacher that works within a school running forest school sessions, and she was telling us that the sessions are 45 minutes long, and I was like, how do you even do anything with a group of kids in like a forest school site in 45 minutes? Like, I just think about how much play I let in my sessions, and you think, I'm not sure. I mean, I guess maybe they just play in the woods, but she was talking about trying to do tool work, and I thought that's not much time to to do that. So yeah, very tokenistic, as you say.
So due to funding and various reasons and capacity, we haven't had those trainee teachers for a few years. One of the most powerful sort of influences that I think we have on some teachers is when they come with their group.
Okay.
Yeah. Because they're not having to lead from the front. They're witnessing the children in a completely different environment. An example recently is we were working at Tiverton High School for probably about 20 days in total on an outreach project, helping to develop an alternative provision centre in the school.
Okay.
Garden and polytunnel and pizza tunnel and workshops and so
Amazing.
on. We built with the kids who can't be in a classroom.
Yeah.
You know, the pretty challenging kids or kids with particular educational needs. And, you know, found it... our team found it quite challenging in certain ways because the culture just feels quite toxic, really, in terms of the relationship between the staff and the students, and a lot of the students seem to be kind of kicking off because of the sort of oppressive nature of the environment to an extent. Anyway, we felt it was ready for those kids. There was a small number, 10 or so, to come on a day visit here. And they were amazing because we'd already built relationship with them. But they were in a completely different environment.
Yeah.
And they weren't certainly in a familiar environment, so that helped. But they weren't in that school environment. That they just, as particularly the ones who can't be in a classroom for whatever reason, it's almost like the school triggers them into being not the necessarily best version of themselves that they could be.
Yeah, so it must have been great for the teachers to see them in that different space.
So the teachers, there were 2-day visits with the same group, and the teachers were really, you know, this is an example that, you know, they were quite emotional, quite blown away by witnessing what those children could be like.
Yeah.
You know, because they were well behaved, they were compliant, they were getting on with stuff, they were having they were having a lovely time, they were really enjoying themselves, they were engaged, they were learning, they were polite, they weren't swearing. It was like, you know, and it was that so that's quite powerful. I would love to do more work with teachers. We've offered that school to, you know, get a bunch of teachers out here and do some professional development with them, because I think particularly working with the SEN kids, I think SEND kids, it's, you know, the conventional way of doing things just doesn't work.
No,
you know, it's got to be much more of a relational approach anyway, and also there's so little practical stuff going on in schools now. There's very little in terms of crafts and, you know, forest school and gardening and, you know, there's very little opportunity for anything other than a classroom-based one-size-fits-all curriculum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what's desperately missing is for all children, not you know, this is the academic ones and everybody is learning some basic life skills. I don't think you learn how to look after yourself on a limited budget from doing food tech. You know, there needs to be a completely fresh approach to, you know, just how do we survive and what is good and what is healthy and you know, learning practical skills because if you learn a craft, you know, you learn how to use your hands doing one thing, then it's transferable. Once you know, we find children coming here who really, it just feels like they've never done anything with their hands. And so it feels like a whole new thing for them to start making something or building something or fashioning something.
Yeah.
Because there's so little of that taking place in schools now.
Yeah.
That the kids can't really even use tools. Don't really know how.
Yeah.
So I mean, aren't these life skills? Aren't these things?
Think so, yeah.
Aren't these things important?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
It's really interesting, the things that get focused on in the mainstream school system and things that don't. I can't quite work out the logic in it. But
understanding where their food comes from and what's really involved. I mean, when we have a long camp here, and we'll be doing it with this bunch from London in a couple of weeks, on the third or fourth day, we got this amazing guy who's a gamekeeper, and he'll on the fourth day he'll bring a deer in, and we'll skin and butcher a deer with the kids. And this isn't about us saying that this is the right thing.
No.
You know, we're not trying to put a value judgment on it. What we're trying to encourage them to do is question the ground upon which they stand.
Yeah.
You know, what do I care for? What do I believe in?
Yeah.
You know, usually all the meat eaters and vegans and vegetarians, they are only, when they're 13, 14, 15, they're only so because their parents are.
Yeah.
You know, they've not really got to that. They are getting to that point where it's like, hang on a minute, what do I stand for? So a lot of the content of some of our longer, more transformative programs is about rites of passage. It is about challenge. It is about giving them some real visceral experiences that are going to give them the opportunity to hopefully they'll be provoked into sort of like asking themselves some questions, because there's usually quite a lot of, when we do that, for example, and everyone has the choice.
Yeah.
They
don't have to do it.
They don't have to do it. They can come up here and do a bit of quiet gardening. The conversations are still about that issue.
Yeah.
Food choices, because what I feel is really important, you know, particularly in light of the fact that 25% of all greenhouse gases come from the way we produce and consume our food, and what we produce and consume, is bringing to the consciousness of young people the realization that every single plate of food that every time you sit down and eat a plate of food, you are making
an impact.
Yeah. You're having an impact on people and planet and your own well-being, and it's a political decision.
Yeah.
In a sense.
And I guess for here, because there's so many wild deer, you can then bring in the fact that actually the carbon footprint of that deer is much less than your meat that you've shipped from the other side of the country or world, can't you?
Yeah, and it's about, that's partly, as you say, and it's about sort of degrees. It's not helping them realise it's not black and white. No, it's not about eating meat or not eating meat. It's like, hang on a minute, you might want to eat meat, but do you really want to go and get some fast food thing where that animal that is being produced has never seen the light of day and has never had a chance to be a chicken or a deer or a sheep? You know, it's been
in a shed.
It's never seen. So, you know, does that matter?
Do
you care about that?
It's interesting framing it, isn't it? Because the husbandry school, I'm on their veg bag scheme. They only deliver to like a mile radius, and every now and then they'll send an email and say we've got fresh meat because we've slaughtered our whatever. And so they had goat meat, and I said to my 14-year-old, I'm going to buy some goat mince, and she said, I don't want to eat goat, like they're too nice for her. But we sat down and we chatted for ages about it. I was like, but these animals were like raised a mile up the road, and they've gone to like a slaughterhouse nearby and then come back, like, and then once we put it in the context of kind of miles and that kind of stuff, she was like, okay, well, I'll try it, but if I don't like it, I'm not eating it again. And then of course, you know, made spaghetti bolognese out of it, and she was like, oh, it's fine. I was like, oh, funny that. But it was interesting that her gut reaction was, no, I don't want to because it's too cute. And then once it was framed within like the bigger picture, as you say, of like, it's not black and white, she was kind of a bit more like, oh, okay, maybe
it's really interesting when we do it at groups, because some of them real rampant meat eaters absolutely can't bear it, and they won't be part of it, and vegetarians and vegans are often really curious and get right involved,
and that's really interesting.
It's really more. We had one year when we had a group, and there's a job of work to do when you've done the kind of skinning and you've cut it up into joints, then there's actually some chopping up meat and getting meat off bones and things like that. And it was just so interesting. 3 vegetarian girls
Yeah.
spent the whole afternoon chopping meat off bones.
Oh, really?
Which is that, and
Not what you expected.
And I question on it, and one of the things was that there was a certain level of non-attachment.
Yeah.
There was a certain, oh well, we're not. It's quite enjoy doing this, but it doesn't. I know I'm not going to be eating it because I'm a vegetarian.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's really
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So it's certainly the lines aren't drawn between vegetarian and vegan at all, and it's about provoking those conversations and encourage. And we do talk, and I have shown films sometimes to these groups about some of the more horrific aspects of factory farming. It's about helping young people make informed decisions. It's not about trying to preempt what decision they should be making or trying to impose some sort of set of views, but just equipping them with the information. And we as a society, we're not, I mean, the way meat's produced is kept away from us.
Yeah.
It's just in a nice little plastic packet in a supermarket.
Yeah, you don't have to think about it too much.
No.
Yeah. So that kind of trying to give people information and see the food kind of at its source, is that partly why you do the community events as well? Because you did your farm, but I know that you do like kind of day events, because I almost came to one of your solstice ones. What are those events the same kind of deal, that people come and help with whatever's going on the farm that day?
The community events, we not so much people getting involved in helping, but certainly getting involved in a certain extent. So, when we finally got a wooden floor in the barn, it was in preparation. But I was involved in a play. We had a play,
that's
piece
cool.
of theatre in there, which was a piece of theatre that myself and a group of men had created around covert depression in men and toxic masculinity and all that. It was a powerful piece of theatre. Anyway, the idea was to not just invite people to come just for the performance, but invite people to come early at 5:00. We opened our little shed bar, the Dock and Thistle, and produced food and fed them and gave people a chance so it's about arriving, it's about having more of an immersive experience, and then the piece of theatre is on, and then so we've had a few events like that where we kind of prolong it and come and just enjoy the space and have some food and have a drink, and
so it's just that kind of sharing again of sharing
and
the space.
meeting other people. We had a really crazy wassail.
Amazing.
First time we've done it. And some of our team are pretty myself included, a little bit of a history of being involved in various theatrical exploits. So we decided that we could invent our own way of wassailing the trees. So we created some crazy theatre with taking crowds of people around and visiting trees, where trees with their different name, because about 70 different varieties of apple up here, and each tree had its name, but also there were these diseases, like apple scab, who was played by a character, and codling moth. And it was hilarious.
That sounds
we had a
great.
really fun
I
thing.
hope you do that again next year.
we are
Brilliant.
doing it next year. So
a bit more exciting then, isn't it? Just pouring cider on apple trees, is that part of it usually?
Well, that's the thing. I've been to a few wassails, and it's the bits of toast up the tree and banging guns. Well, you do it in January. Banging guns, is that about? It's partly about warding off the evil spirits, but it's partly about waking the trees up. Well, January's a bit early for waking
they don't want to be awake right then.
So we sang to them. We had one of the community events we have here is we have a choir. Every Tuesday at 4:30, the choir meet, and Helen Yeomans, who established Glorious Chorus, who's retired from that now, she comes and runs our choir.
Amazing.
So we prepared some songs for the wassail. So we went and sung to the trees, because we decided that actually the trees would like to be sung to, just so that they can just still be in their dream state, and they can just be, it can just help to prepare them for March, April when
yes,
they wake
when
up.
they're actually meant to wake up, yeah.
So that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
We sang to the trees, and then had a ceilidh in the evening.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so,
that sounds like a great day.
But we've hosted a couple of times the village harvest festival.
Nice.
Where
is that your classic, like, biggest turnip and, like, do you know those classic
No.
ones?
The
Okay.
harvest festival was
Okay.
was more the village sort of church event.
Oh, okay, not one of. Do you know what ones I mean? They had them around half time, don't they? Where people bring in their giant vegetables or funny shaped vegetables. And yeah.
They haven't done that.
It's very quintessentially British.
We do, and we're having one this October the 6th. We have an open day, which is we invite everybody who's involved and members of the local community, and that is a kind of celebration of harvest. And just the celebration of the time of year. Yeah. And it's kind of create a bit of a sort of village fete type atmosphere, and we make pizzas in the pizza oven and have a tea and coffee stall and play some silly games. Okay. Play porridge jousting. Have you ever played porridge jousting? Ooh.
Maybe I'll have to come and have a go.
Porridge jousting is great.
What is it?
Well, you have your jouster is in the wheelbarrow, dressed in overalls, with a pot of porridge and a wooden spoon, and your horsey drives the wheelbarrow, right?
And you've got to get porridge on your opponent.
And you start at each end of the thing, and you charge at each other, and you have to flick porridge.
Oh, that sounds ridiculous.
It's hilarious.
But in a great way.
Absolutely hilarious. Then you go to the other end and then start again. So it's proper jousting.
Yeah.
But you just have to charge past each other and try the person in the barrow trying to flick porridge at the other person.
How do you declare the winner? The person with the least
there are
porridge?
Judges.
There are
judges. Yes, it's properly judged.
It's properly judged, of course.
It's a serious game.
Oh, that sounds amazing. 6th of October.
Yeah.
Excellent. Joe, I could spend all day talking to you in this garden because it's so glorious, but I am aware that you've probably got more work to do this afternoon. Before I start to close up, is there anything else you want to tell us about On the Hill, or anything that you've got planned coming up?
Well, we are reviewing. We're getting together with a small team that we have just to review how we proceed next year and how we can be of best use. We've had a bit of a transition this year. Our dear friend Rosie, who worked with us for 3 years, moved on. It's those of us who are working full time and not really getting paid full time. So it's a struggle to keep the whole kind of impulse moving. She needed to move on, made a massive contribution, but needed to move on and get a full-time salaried job. So we are we've been in a state of flux. So it's, what can we achieve with the team that we have? We have a wider team of facilitators that we draw on, but often they, as freelance facilitators, often get full-time jobs or have babies or whatever else. So it's we need always to be having people working with us who really know properly the way we work, the way we facilitate groups on the land here. So it's what we can achieve with the limited team that we have available is partly that. Now we've got the cob barn nearly complete. We are able to have some groups come in simply just hiring the venue, which is really handy, and really lovely for them because it's such a lovely space now for somebody to come for a weekend camp or whatever it is. But it's long term. We're looking at how a certain part of the farm could be formed into a land trust that has, so it's kind of succession planning and looking at how an impulse like this can have long-term continuity. I've seen so many amazing projects with people putting an amazing energy in, and because it becomes so dependent on certain individuals, and if those individuals get old or leave or die or get ill or whatever, then the whole thing can crumble.
Yeah.
So it's creating a sort of a structure and a long-term plan of how can such an initiative have longevity and be sustainable in both human resources and financially and all the rest of it. So that's something that the directors of On the Hill are really looking at all the time.
Okay.
So the winter is the winter's a bit of a downtime for us. We do bits and pieces, but much less, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect on the previous year and try and put in place what we're going to be available for and take bookings and things for the following year.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been such a lovely way to spend a couple of hours. Before I finish, I always ask everyone the same 3 questions just to finish it. And am I going to remember them? This is ridiculous. I've done 5 seasons and I've just forgotten the first question. Oh, I remember. The first question is, how do you relax? Which always makes me laugh because most people are like, what's that? Because everyone I talk to is a busy person. But...
I had a lovely Sunday yesterday. Because I wasn't responsible for anything or anybody, but I was able just to potter around.
Oh, nice.
And I like that. I like pottering.
What did your pottering look like?
My pottering looked like walking up the hill where there were some errant sheep that wouldn't come down when we moved the sheep last time.
Okay.
But because we'd gone up there with a few of us, they'd just been spooked. And I went up there with a bucket of food, and I just talked to them for a while and got some through a gate and said, right, you all ready to follow me? Come on then, let's go. And they were really calm. Nobody was spooked. And I managed to bring them all the way down the hill and walk through a field of vegetables and through another field and get them to reunite with the flock. And they'd been up there a month since we moved the rest of the flock. Yeah, because you sometimes have to go and ask the neighbour to bring his dog up to chase them. I didn't want to chase them.
No.
But it was really relaxing, actually. I really
nice.
enjoyed it. And it was just like, I just learned once again that the best way of manoeuvring our sheep around is just to go on my own with a bucket of food and not get them spooked by lots of other people.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And just wandering around. We've got all these lovely apples and there's some of them starting to ripen now, and they're all different varieties. And
amazing.
I'm just wandering through the orchard and checking the apples out, and there's a branch there that's looking like it's about to break because there's too many apples on, so thinning them out and taking a few of the windfall apples to the pigs, and just enjoying not being in a hurry, doing a few useful things, few things that needed to be doing, but not being
rushing,
being in a hurry. I also do need to leave the farm to properly relax.
Okay. Because
everywhere I can see
things. Yeah.
And actually, Tina and I are going away for a few days to where we try and get every year. Just take a caravan to East Prawl and sit in the middle of a field.
Excellent.
And read books.
From one field to another.
Yeah, but there's nothing to do in that field.
It's okay. Well, that's a nice segue, because my next question is, what are you reading right now? So maybe it's a book that you're about to take with you.
So I haven't decided what book I'm taking with me, but through the summer I've very get very little reading done. Through the winter I managed to read a few books. There's a Kazuo Ishiguro book that I really want to read. I want to read again, because I found it really inspiring, that Wilding book from the Knepp Estate.
Yeah.
But I haven't decided, but I will take a book and I will commit myself to reading
at least one
book that is, but it's quite nice. I do enjoy just reading I think Arundhati Roy's written another book, and I'd really like to read that.
I love her.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Really amazing writer, yeah.
Anyway, so reading, winter, and going away on holidays, because in the summer, honestly, I just
too much to do.
Just too much to do.
And my final question is, why is being outdoors important to you?
I suppose for me, in terms of my life experience, you know, I was brought up on a farm, and I spent the first years before I went to school. My sister was reminding me of this the other day. She's quite a bit older than me, but she's remembering the fact that I didn't wear shoes until I went to school. I wore wellies in the winter.
Yeah.
And I just was barefoot, and I was just outdoors all the time. And I suppose it's just where I feel most comfortable. You know, it was funny because when it rained the other day, all I wanted to do was go out in the rain.
Yeah.
And just wander around observing everything. So everything's getting a lovely drink, and there's water trickling everywhere. I lived in Andalusia for 10 years, and the first rains that came in the autumn was so exciting.
Yeah.
And you just wanted to be out in it.
Out in it, yeah.
You know, and it was always warm rain.
I was just about to say, I bet it was a bit warmer than the rain.
Well, the rain that we had the other day felt very
too
tropical. It was really warm. It was kind of, you know. So I don't know. I just feel that that's where I feel most comfortable.
Yeah.
I can't be cooped up for too long. It starts to make me feel anxious and uncomfortable. You know, if I do office work, I need to just do a couple of hours and get out.
Yeah.
You know, I can't imagine being stuck in an office all day.
No, me neither. Oh, well, thanks so much for your time today. I've really appreciated it, and I've really enjoyed it.
Great. It's been really nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you. A massive thank you to Joe for inviting me up to On the Hill and their beautiful space there to talk to me about the work that they've been doing and their vision for the future. I really enjoyed that conversation. It was such a lovely way to end the 5th season of the Outdoors Group podcast. We hope that you enjoyed listening to it as well. If you did, as always, please rate the podcast, subscribe to it, share it with your friends, and do all the things that mean that more people will find it. As I say, that's the end of the 5th season of the Outdoors Group podcast. We'll be taking a break for a couple of months, but we'll be back with season 6 around Christmas, and we hope that you'll join us again at that time. And if you're worrying about getting your Outdoors Group podcast fix, maybe go back over the last 5 seasons and see if there's any podcast episodes that you've missed or would like to re-listen to. And if someone out there is listening and was thinking that they'd love to join us as a guest to talk about something they're passionate about to do with the outdoors or education or climate change or parenting, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So please do get in touch, and we would love to arrange to have you join us as a guest on the next season of the Outdoors Group podcast. Until then, as always, thanks for listening.